This is part 2 of the magical order of the Fraternitas Saturni, the Brotherhood of Saturn. I will cover in this video the organization of the society and its roots in Gnosticism. The Grand Master of the Fraternitas Saturni, Eugene Grosch, or his lodge name, Gregor A. Gregorius, in 1960 published a book called The Novel of a Demonic Entity. Allegedly, the entity created in the writing of this book caused members of the lodge to experience intense states of possession, and eventually the entity had to be magically banished. There were various conflicts between members of the lodge after this, and Grosch died of a heart attack in 1964. Internal struggles followed, and in 1971, many internal papers of the Fraternitas Saturni, which were secret, were made public when a Dr. Adolf Hamburger, professor of methodology and scientific theory at a German university, published them. As a result of this, there was an increased public interest in the lodge. Leadership of the lodge changed hands many times after this. In 2008, the Fraternitas Saturni celebrated its 80th anniversary, and the journal Saturn Gnosis resumed publication. The lodge rules of the Fraternitas Saturni organization state that it is a, quote, lodge of knowledge with an occult esoteric emphasis. Members are expected to become Winkel-Garrick, or square level members of society and of the lodge. The lodge considers itself to be enlightened, secret, ritualistic, and magical. Members are bound together under oaths of loyalty which are believed to be eternal. Both men and women can become initiates. End quote. Gregorius wrote that on account of her moon powers, a female is considered to be the bleeding wound of the cosmos and a negative manifestation of Saturn. The task of a male is to overcome the resulting demonic momentum, and it is the female's duty to spiritualize her demonic assets. There are 33 degrees that can be obtained within the Fraternitas Saturni Lodge. This is an adaptation of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry. The lodge demon is the spiritual head of the lodge and identified with the holder of the 33rd degree. And this is called the Gradus Ordinus Templii Orientis Saturni, or for short, the Gotos. The Gotos is an egregore. An egregore is an autonomous psychic entity created by a collective group mind. It is sustained by belief, ritual, and sacrifice, and relies upon the devotion of a group of people, from a small coven to a small nation, for its existence. An egregore that receives enough sustenance can take on a life of its own, becoming an independent deity, with powers its believers can use to further their own spiritual advancement and material desires. The egregore of the Fraternitas Saturni is thought to exist in the spheres of Saturn and is sustained through the magical work of the brothers, including the rites of sex magic. The Fraternitas Saturni is a true left-hand path organization. This means, according to the definition given by Dr. Stephen Flowers, that lodge members seek the path of non-union with the objective universe. It is a way of isolating consciousness within the subjective universe. Members utilize a state of self-imposed psychic solitude, refining the soul or psyche to increasingly perfect levels. The objective universe is then made to harmonize itself with the will of the individual psyche. This is in contrast to the right-hand path, which seeks union with universal reality and to become one with the divine or natural order. The Fraternitas Saturni teaches the importance of achieving the annihilation of the individual self. Magic is the method utilized by members to discover their own inner divinity. The Fraternitas Saturni is an eclectic organization in that it brings together teachings from many different influences. The founder, Grosch, aka Gregorius, drew from many different sources, including the teachings of Aleister Crowley, Kabbalah, ancient Egyptian wisdom, Masonic symbolism, astrology, Nordic mysticism, Wilhelm Reich and his theories of orgone energy, and various Eastern teachings. In the book, the Fraternitas Saturni, History, Doctrine, and Rituals of the Magical Order of the Brotherhood of Saturn, Stephen Flowers does an excellent job of explaining the doctrines of the Fraternitas Saturni. In doing so, he relies upon primary source documents, especially those that were written by the founder of the Fraternitas Saturni, Gregor A. Gregorius, as well as many others that are translated from German. Flowers has a doctorate in Germanic languages and medieval studies. In order to explain the term Saturn Gnosis, which refers to the occult system of cosmology developed by Gregorius, it's necessary to say a few words about the terms Gnostic and Gnosticism. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek word gnostikos, meaning knowing or able to discern. If the word has a capital G, Gnostic with a capital G, it describes something related to Gnosticism, a form of non-conventional mystical Christianity that emerged in the 2nd century and that is still considered heretical by many Christians. The central belief of the Gnostic doctrine is that the world is divided into polarities, light and dark, positive and negative. According to Aleister Crowley's philosophy of Thelema, the history of humanity can be divided into a series of aeons, each of which was accompanied by its own forms of magical and religious expression. The ancient Gnostic sects believed that the aeons were the emanations of God, which descended from the fullness or pleroma of God's light into darkness. Aeons are made up of an array of elements, including the archons that rule them and the angels that act as messengers. According to Gnostic teachings, an aeon is a phenomenon of time-space. The earth may pass through these aeons or ages that are ruled over by archons, which is the Greek word for ruler, of astrologically determined periods of time. But the individual soul of a man must also pass through the barriers of the aeon in order to return to the light. The core Gnostic belief is that there is a God that exists beyond all knowing, and in addition, there is a threefold God that exists in the fullness of being or light. The pleroma transcends the place in the world where matter exists, and the two are separated by a great barrier, and how these two were separated is a matter of various theories. However, what the Gnostic sects have in common is a belief that our world was not created by the God of light. It was created by an entity that resulted from a deficiency in the pleroma, and which came about either through progressive degeneration as the outflow of being got further and further from its source, or through a conscious withdrawal of divine will, or thelema, from the outer reaches. However it happened, lesser independent entities arose in the graduated levels or aeons of the new cosmos. These entities were called archons, again, Greek word meaning rulers. One of these archons, according to the Gnostics, is the entity or demiurge that created our world of matter. Some Gnostics believed this entity was Jehovah, or Yad-He-Vav-He, the God of the Old Testament. Gnostics held that man as a mixed entity consisting of elements with origins in both the world of light of God and the world of darkness, the demiurge, could only be redeemed by knowledge or gnosis. This knowledge was a direct experience of being, not something to acquire by learning or even by conclusions reached by logical methods. The demiurge Jehovah demanded faith or pistis, and the good God could only be reached through actual knowledge or gnosis. Various doctrines developed over the course of centuries that were offshoots of this main idea. For the purposes of this video, we are concerned with what is called Saturn Gnosis. This is not like Christian Gnosis, which describes duality as a question of good and evil. In Saturn Gnosis, the planet and archetype of Saturnus is the focal point for the manifestation of the demiurge, which is identified with Lucifer, the bearer of light. According to the website of the Grand Lodge Communitas Saturni, quote, Saturn Gnosis implies that a man or a woman, as microcosm, is the reflected image of the macrocosm. Humans therefore possess the complete creative potentiality of the universe. This is expressed in the sentence, "Every man and every woman is a star." Now it is necessary to evolve this powerful and mighty potentiality within and to find the own true will. This is expressed in the law of Thelema, which says, "Do what thou wilt" is the whole of the law. The alternative is slavery and suppression by the dying Christian God, whose image has been maintained by the agony of his followers during the last 2,000 years. The fading age of Pisces has been ruled astrologically by the realms of Jupiter and Neptune. But this power, or in the diction of the Saturn Gnosis, this demiurge, has come to an end. The drawing of the age of Aquarius and the dawning of the age of Aquarius is influenced by Saturn and Uranus, end quote. The Fraternitas Saturni, while influenced and inspired by Aleister Crowley, developed its own aeonic philosophy for the age of Aquarius. According to Crowley's philosophy of Thelema, the history of humanity can be divided into a series of aeons, each of which was accompanied by its own forms of magical and religious expression. Because of the natural precession of the equinoxes, the Earth is now moving into the age of Aquarius and leaving the age of Pisces. Traditionally, this was the sign of the zodiac. The age of Aquarius was the sign of the zodiac that was said to be ruled by Saturn. And when other planets were subsequently discovered, the planet Uranus was also said to rule this sign. So the influence of the coming Aquarian age is being guided by the demiurge Saturnus, which is in turn being transformed through Uranian influence. At present, we are living in the time of Pisces, the last days of the time of Pisces. And that is the reason why the Maya, for example, talked about the end of the age, because we're coming to the end of the age of Pisces. And the time of Pisces is ruled by Jupiter under the hidden influence of Neptune. So this is why we are now seeing at the close of the Piscean age, we are increasingly being bombarded on the political scene with a collectivist communistic agenda. And this will change with the incoming Uranian influence as we move closer into the age of Aquarius. According to Dr. Flowers, Saturnian teachings hold that the problems and conflicts in today's world are caused by the convergence of the two competing and converging aeonic streams, the Piscean and the Aquarian. It is said the Saturnian spiritual elect will bring a new order out of this chaos, even though there is definitely a dark side in the age of Aquarius. The dark side is that the Aquarian age will only appear to be one of rational and humanitarian egalitarianism, but this will only be a facade. To quote Flowers, looming behind the false front will be one of a system of control by a ruling elite, the final reign of the Illuminati or enlightened ones. And that's the end of part 2. And if you think about what he said in that last quote and you look at what's going on in today's world, you really start to pay attention and realize why these teachings, whether you follow the left-hand path or the right-hand path, it is very, very significant and important to know about, because a lot of what's going on in the world scene right now coincides a lot with a lot of these teachings. Next time I'll be back to talk about the mythology of Saturn worship.